I'm Rob Shields, and this is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. If you think that being a competition judge is primarily about taking down times, well, you're right. But international judges Daphne Harmsen and William Shandling show us that it's also about innovation, empathy, and a deep sense of fairness. Daphne Harmsen and William Shandling, thanks for joining Peace Talks.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
It's good to have you both. Let's jump in and begin at the beginning. Daphne, what's your earliest puzzle memory?
I know I must have been puzzling all my life. We had puzzles, but one of the things I clearly remember is my sister doing a 5,000-piece Ravensburger puzzle of the Night Watch, which was darker.
You said 5,000?
As usual. Yeah, 5,000. It was there for a long time. And we were not allowed to help her.
Was this punishment in some way?
No, it was her puzzle. And so did not put in one piece of her puzzle, that one. But now I did enter competitions with her in a team. So now I can put in pieces as well.
That's very kind of her. What about you, William?
Well, Rob, as it turns out, I brought a show and tell item for my very first puzzle from childhood. And so my first puzzle memory actually isn't even my memory. It's stories that my parents share. So when I was 3, I got this puzzle. It's called 40 Hats for 40 Cats. And it's manufactured by the Great American Puzzle Factory. It's an 80-piece puzzle for kids, but it's actually 40 different 2-piece puzzles where there's a hat and a cat that will line up and lock in place. So my parents say that I did it so much and got so bored with it so quickly that I started flipping the pieces backwards, as we all do in this community, and just did it by shape and not by the actual pattern on the front. So, and what's ironic about that is everyone who's listening from Orange County is like, William doesn't like cats. In what world is it that his very first puzzle was a cat puzzle?
This was before you knew, perhaps, your relationship with cats?
Yes, very much a dog person now.
Daphne, did you have an obsession with puzzles at all? Or did your sister's giant puzzle and a no-touch philosophy put you off on puzzles?
No, I've done them every once in a while. We would take a typical 1,000-piece puzzle, put it out on the table, leave it there for like up to a week, finish it. So it's always been there in my life. But I think since COVID, or actually a little bit before COVID, my sister went to a World Championship in 2019, the first one. And that kind of brought back this whole puzzling. And then COVID, of course, we bought a few puzzles.
How did your sister hear about competitive puzzling?
She has a very good friend in Spain, and she wanted to see if she could do something in the area. And looked on the internet, found this. She was always fond of puzzling. Sort of that came about. And she's been every year since.
Now, it sounds like you weren't so obsessed with puzzling in your life. How did you get dragged into the competitive puzzling world?
We've done some competitions in the Netherlands. You have the famous Van Haasteren competition with exclusively Van Haasteren puzzles, which is really big thing in the Netherlands. And we competed there. It used to be only a team competition with 4 people. So I competed with my sister and my 2 daughters. We've done that 2 years in a row. Got into the finals both years, which is a big thing because we all 4 of us don't really like Van Haasteren because it's a little bit too busy.
It's weird hearing a Dutch person say that.
Yeah, I know. Usually all Dutch people will really like Van Haasteren. But we found out now that there are people in the Netherlands that don't like it and are happy that we started another competition as well. So it's actually through my sister that we entered this world, and we've done some team competitions. And then in 23, my daughter, or actually during COVID, my daughter was supposed to go with my sister to the World Championship and compete together because she was still too young to go individual. That was when it was still, I think, 18. And then the whole COVID thing, and then they changed it to June, and the date didn't fit into her schedule. And then 24, she went with my sister. No, 23, she went already with my sister. And then 24, I went with them and didn't feel that I was quick enough to really enter the competition. And that's where the volunteering came into place.
William, how did the competitive puzzling enter your world?
So it wasn't until my friend Maggie during COVID discovered puzzle swapping, because as you know, early on in COVID, all the puzzles online were starting to sell out. So after my brother and I, who were puzzling all throughout COVID at our parents' house, we bought all the 1000s we could, and those sold out. So then we were going to 2000s, 3000s, and then even did a couple of 5000s during COVID. Maggie said, hey, we should start doing puzzle swapping since there's no other options. So we would swap puzzles. And then she found this quote unquote puzzle convention that was taking place in 2022 in San Diego. And so she and I, now enthusiastic about jigsaw puzzles, said, hey, yeah, let's go to this jigsaw puzzle convention. Oh, there's also this competition that's attached to it. Oh, I guess we could try to go fast and see how that works. So we signed up for pairs. And that was a very quick and easy introduction via the USA Jigsaw Nationals in 2022 in San Diego. And we found ourselves wanting to also volunteer. And that's how we quickly fell into the volunteering judging aspect of things. And the rest is history, Rob.
Did you prepare at all for the Nationals event?
Maggie and I did do 2 practice puzzles, and I couldn't even tell you what the times were, but we just remember from one puzzle to the other. So like we did 2 back-to-back 500s just in the same afternoon. And we particularly chose the easier one first so we could learn like how to communicate and strategy if there was such a thing, because what would we know? And then we saw such a drastic improvement by like 20% in time on that second puzzle, even though we perceived it to be harder. So we really enjoyed that. And then we got to the competition, and in the pairs round, we got 42nd place out of the 100 teams, which we were just happy to finish the puzzle, and we were happy to crack the top 50%. So
yeah, good for you.
At that point, it was at that point I realized I was a very okay puzzler.
So then you got into the volunteering side during the same competition?
Yeah, I remember there was some sort of incentive, though I couldn't say what, or couldn't remember what, of if you volunteer for at least 2 sessions, you get some sort of gift. I don't know if it was a t-shirt or a puzzle, whatever that was, but it was enough for us to say yes to it. And then we quickly fell in love with the organizational aspect of it. It was very dynamic. And at the time, I know you're very familiar with the ears that I wear. That's kind of where that started, because Maggie and my team, or our pair's name was the Puzzle Ears. So Maggie came up with that because we both happened to own sets of Mickey ears. So that was very convenient. And my parents called me right after our competition round and said, do you understand how easy it was for us to see you and Maggie on the live stream? You were the only 2 people wearing headwear at the time, and it was Mickey ears. So can you keep doing that? Like, leave them on, because then we're watching you and Maggie walk around the competition floor as judges. So that's really where that started, was with Maggie at that first competition.
It's funny, I think I've mentioned it a number of times, but my wife and I went to that same competition. We had a more intentional based trying to be seen approach, where we picked out colors that would be seen in the live stream so that we could see ourselves in the background of the good puzzlers later. And so many people have either consciously or unconsciously adopted that same strategy, that now we have to compete for the colors. But I feel like the competition in the headwear is still an open game for visibility.
I mean, Jim's top hat is pretty darn spiffy, but I think there is room for more. And I do have people that come up for each competition, like, I brought my ears too.
Oh, that's amazing.
Even at Worlds, there were a couple folks. So that was certainly unexpected and a lot of fun.
With respect to that first experience doing some volunteering, you were sort of caught up in the organizational component of the entire thing, it sounds like. So did that pull you in, or did that stay at the edge of your conscience for a while? Because the next Nationals wasn't for more than a year.
it was a very fast it was a fast track into that world of really competition organizing, because as soon as that competition was done in late 2022, Lisa Moskowitz, my OCSP co-founder, Orange County Speed Puzzlers, at the time she was hosting puzzle swaps locally in Orange County every month. And so we would always casually go out to lunch after those swaps, and there were like 15 people at that lunch, everyone who had gone to nationals, and said, we had so much fun at nationals. How do we practice more often, so when we get to nationals, we can be even better than we are right now? And people were saying, yeah, someone should host a competition. Yeah, someone should. And no one was speaking up or giving an indication that they were interested in that. So for whatever reason, Lisa and I kind of caught each other's side glances at that table. And then we were like, oh, like non-verbally saying to each other, like, this is us, isn't it? And we're like, uh-huh. So then we got on a phone call later that afternoon without really telling anyone else at that table. Within 2 days, we had our name, our mission statement, a logo. Within a week, we had a website and a Facebook group ready to launch. So yeah, we founded early 2023 with our very first competition in February of 23. So we just hit our full third year of competition now.
Congratulations on that. It sounds like Orange County Speed Puzzling could have taken all of your time. Were you getting involved at the national level as well?
Yeah, I was able to focus on both, and I was invited by the USA JPA board to be the volunteer room monitor for 2024. That was held again in San Diego. So I was able to provide pretty comprehensive volunteer training, because I have a background in training large groups of people in a quick amount of time that all have different styles of learning. And we were able to introduce really just those philosophies of what the judging needs to be. And when we say judging at that competition, we really mean time recording, but it's also the safety of the competitor's entrance and exit to the competition space, what you're looking for during the competition for light and easy behavioral corrections before needing to bring that up to the head volunteer judge or the actual head judge who's a USA JPA board member. And it was at that competition that we also first introduced the Shandling shim. So just like a little bit of paper that goes underneath a puzzle piece when it gets dropped on the floor. But that was all a catalyst from a safety perspective, so people weren't tripping or kicking those puzzle pieces away. So it's little things like that we were able to really elevate from 2022 into the 2024 competition.
What is it about the rules that means that a judge can't just pick that piece up and give it to a person rather than let it sit on the floor?
It's a perfect question. So when you're in a competition setting and you're on the floor, you're walking between rows and columns of tables. You truly don't know whose piece that is when it falls on the floor. It could literally fall where we call the four corners, where, wow, it could be any of these four tables that are all kind of quadranted, is that a word, up against each other. So out of fairness, we kind of leave the piece where it lays, because you truly don't know whose piece it is until someone realizes, aha, there's a missing piece. Oh, there's one on the floor. That's definitely ours. It's a 2 in, 2 out adjacent. It's ours. Or, oh, I don't know if that's ours. Okay, well, we'll wait because there's a piece of paper under it now. Like, we'll just wait till the end of the competition, or we know that it's ours. So from a fairness perspective, we don't really want to move it. We just kind of let it lie where it is. But one of the pieces of feedback is, now it's really easy for someone to see where it is. That is correct. Most important factor that we need to consider is safety of those traversing the space. So the safety component is more important than the inherent slight help of quickly locating a piece for a participant towards the end of their puzzling experience.
I think I'm going to need a little bit more background on that, because it is a little challenging for me to understand how a little teeny piece like that presents a safety risk. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so luckily in some of the competitions we've seen, there's carpet, and on carpet it's not a big deal, but on any slicker surfaces like hardwood or tile, it is very easy for someone who can't see that piece because they're walking around and they're focused elsewhere. They're not looking at where they're stepping. It's a perfect tiny slip hazard, and we don't want someone to fall, especially in the middle of a competition.
Yeah, I do agree with you that pieces can go remarkably far
We have also seen where a competitor gets overzealous and thinks it is theirs, so they pick it up and put it on their table. And then they're spending extra time themselves of like, oh, wait, where does this piece go? And then putting it back off to the side. And then there's another puzzler that they have affected because they picked it up too quickly, not realizing it really wasn't theirs. And now they've put the other puzzler at more of a disadvantage, I think.
Daphne, I've seen some folks have spectacularly explosive starts to puzzles where the pieces just exploded out of the bag and went everywhere. At that point, are you able to sort of jump in and help out? Or is it really your problem, you got to deal with it sort of issue?
I have the feeling your piece is your problem. I'm not there to pick up your pieces, and it would be an advantage if I pick up your pieces and I don't do it for somebody else who maybe I didn't see that they dropped their pieces. So the front runners, I will not touch your pieces. If you're in the back of the field and I see a piece, maybe I will pick it up, usually not. And if you're missing pieces, 9 out of 10 times it's in the bag anyway, isn't it?
For me, 9 out of 10 times it's right on the floor because I've done something stupid and accidentally just brushed them onto the floor. But I understand what you're saying. I do know that some competitions, the bags all get picked up. Sometimes they don't. So is it in the competitions that you guys work through? Are you guys like the bag where the pieces were held always stays on the floor, or do those get picked up? I see judges sometimes inspecting them before they take them away. Like, what's your guys' perspective on that?
I will not pick them up. I'll put them under your table because there might still be pieces in there. And then we won't have the discussion that you say, well, maybe the piece was in the bag and I threw away the bag. So if I have any say in it, the bag will stay in your area. There have been competitions where they want the bags to be picked up. Then I will definitely look 2 or 3 times to see if there are any pieces in there.
Seems like a plastic bag sitting on a floor, William, also becomes a slip hazard.
That's exactly right. And I vividly remember in 2022 having to pick up the clear plastic bags, look up to the ceiling light and really inspect like the entire bag before coming and bringing it up to the front of the room. And we had trash bags. I can't recall if we did the same thing in 2024, but I know for 2025, we stopped that practice completely because of removing those plastic bags from the competition floor. Again, to your point, like from a moment ago, it's possible that there's still pieces in that bag. So instead, the next best safe to do if we're not removing it from the competition floor is in the instructions and the talk down is reminding the participants to put the clear plastic bag in which the puzzle pieces came under their table. So they should toss the drawstring bags if they don't care to keep them into the aisle. We're happy to go around and pick those up at the very start of a competition. But if not, they want to keep it, they should put that under their table completely, just like the drawstring bag if they choose to keep it.
I love that. My perception of the both of you, and it extends to a lot of the judging community, is that you guys are overwhelmingly nice people. But one of the things that I'm really getting out of this, which I really appreciate, is that nice or not, what is important is the fairness of the rules, the safety. And that is like, I like that you're like, I could help you, but the goal is to be fair and safe. The goal isn't for me to be nice to help you out with stuff.
No, it's different if you have a casual competition, then you might do totally different things. But if we're talking about nationals or worlds, sometimes it's about seconds. And if I pick up your piece, that'll be like, if you have to do it yourself, it'll be like 2, 3, 4 seconds. So there could just be a placement difference there.
Yeah, it matters. Absolutely, it matters. So the Shandling Shim, a well-known piece of judging apparatus. Are there other named pieces of judging apparatus out there? Or is this the sole one?
We have to give such great credit to Zacco from Zacco Puzzle Boards. Although this is not a judging piece of equipment, this is truly one for event organizers as a benefit, as well as the competitors themselves. Just the level of fairness and having this now 3D table divider instead of just a singular piece of tape. Zacco's received the feedback, and we've seen it everywhere. where puzzlers are now less trepidatious of getting towards the tape line, and now they have this physical elevated barrier, so they're actually utilizing more of their eligible puzzling space. So it is just such a remarkable innovation, again, not from a judging perspective but from a competition perspective. Rob, have you ever heard of the phrase cheap, fast, good? You can only have two, you can never have three. So I use that same sort of model when I visualize judging or different rules, and we talk about fairness, because in judging and competition organizing, one of the philosophies is, what is the most fair way forward in this moment for a competition or this situation? So that's or in this decision for this particular rule that's going to guide part of the competition. So instead of that triangle of cheap, fast, good, I look at it as, who does this decision or this rule favor? Is it the competitor? Is it the competition organizer? Is it the sponsor or manufacturer? Or is it the judges? So if you can imagine that square with each of those corners, that pinpoint somewhere in the middle of that square is going to start skewing in one direction to one corner of who that rule is going to favor or best support. The goal is always to have a rule that perfectly favors everyone, and it's in the exact center of that square. It's not always the case, but you visually slide that pinpoint to understand, okay, who does this favor, and is safety, which is the number one factor for me, most forefront in this decision?
It feels like that can be a challenging balance to hit, because it's not clear to me how much influence you have on the rules and how the rules are decided, and also those various interests, like the folks putting it on, have strongly weighted, I imagine, perspectives. Let me say this a little differently. As far as I'm aware, you tell me differently, there is not an external judging body for competitive jigsaw puzzling, right? Every event has its own kind of rules that are associated with it, and we can talk about whether that's good or not, which means that as a judge, if you are not well entrenched in the body that is putting on the competition, having influence on what the rules are and how they should be interpreted seems like it can be quite challenging. Is that true?
We just wrote the rules again for the Dutch nationals,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like 90% my rules, so I can do there whatever I want, which is very nice. I can tell you that. And that's actually a funny one. A few months ago, I saw on the German Discord somebody who made with a 3D printer a box holder you can put on the edge of your table. So it's sort of like a clip you can put there, and you can put your box there, and so your puzzle box is actually outside of your table, so you have more space to puzzle. I love the idea, and I see what they're doing. I see that that you have more space on your table. As a puzzler, I like it. As somebody who makes the rules, so you can guess what's in my rules this year for Dutch nationals. It's not allowed, because I think it should be fair for all people. If we want the puzzle box to be on the outside of the table, it should be available for everybody, and it's not at the moment. And then you have the second point that the judges need to be able to walk everywhere around your table. So if it's too far outside of your table, well, what do you do if a judge tips on it, or it falls to the ground or something like that? So, but you see that I think the rules are going to be, it's going to be more and more rules every year. And I think a lot of the people will read the rules of the other countries as well. Like my daughter brought to me a rule from the Norwegians, which I really liked as well, that if you have your headphone on and you don't hear an announcement, that it's your own problem.
I did notice that with respect to the box over the edge issue, I did notice, and it just didn't occur to me what could possibly be the issue there, that maybe it was in the world's rules. There's like you can only have things protrude a certain amount away from your table. And I was like, gosh, what would protrude from your table at all? But now I know.
Well, it's usually the setup for the video.
Mm-hmm.
So, Rob, I think that's a perfect example of that square I was talking about, of what rule favors which which group is the competitor, competition organizer, sponsor, manufacturer, or judges. And in that case, what's the philosophy? Is this is like an airplane when you reserve a seat. Did you reserve your seat and the area around it, like that armrest or the like your legs in the aisle, or is that table at the competition your what is it, 36 inches by 30 inches? Is that your space? Not things protruding out and going past. So I very much, as a judge, am in favor and a competition organizer of things should not be extending past your table no more any more than 4 inches from a safety perspective. Like Daphne was talking about, we would call that interference. We don't want a judge or a camera person to be going by and accidentally bump or knock into something. We've also had puzzle trays extending past the edge of a table during a team competition, and a judge has accidentally brushed up against that and knocked the tray on the floor. That is not the fault of the judge, even though they were the one that caused it, because that puzzle tray was precariously protruding past the edge of the table, like by several inches. So it's like there is some accountability there. So that's a perfect sort of rule, quote unquote, and how that kind of comes into play. You asked a question a moment ago about the amount of influence Daphne or I might have on judging or judging rules, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Daphne has real good influence with the Dutch. As the lead volunteer judge for the upcoming 2026 USA Jigsaw Nationals, and then my involvement with 25 and 24, I've been able to make light suggestions to the board for consideration, which has been really great from a safety perspective, and more so just like an event flow perspective. Some things as simple as, hey, top puzzlers, when you are done, please don't linger waiting for your friends to finish. Please vacate the competition space as quickly as possible, because we need to start the turnover process for the next round. So it's light things like that, where they're not true rules, but they are procedural guidelines that help the entire event flow. And then, Rob, that's also, as far as influence, where the International Speed Puzzling Advisory Committee kind of comes into play, where when we talk about influence, yes, it's true, like you said, there's no true governing body when it comes to judging. However, we were very intentional with organizing IcePack as a advisory committee, where we're not a true board or nonprofit. We are a group of like-minded individuals who are passionate about fairness and safety in the speed puzzling world. And therefore, we come up with and publish considerations for all the different event organizers and organizations around the world, in hopes that they will adopt them and kind of streamline the best as possible. Again, it's all suggestions, not anything official.
And we will get more into IcePack, I promise you. There's no way we're skirting that. It's too interesting a topic. So let's sort of scoot forward to 2024 Worlds, because I feel like this is a confluence of a few things, including the intro of IcePack here. But Daphne, you were there at 2024 Worlds. This was your first Worlds?
It was my first Worlds. My daughter was going for a second time. My sister were third or fourth. And I thought, well, if I'm there anyway, might as well volunteer. And they had a Google form for that in 24. So I filled out my Google form. I looked which ones I wanted to volunteer for. You had 3-hour blocks. And then I didn't hear anything about that anymore. So I went there. I was in Valladolid. And my sister, of course, knows Alfonso and Charlie. And I asked Charlie, well, how about volunteering? And he's like, well, you can help now. And I was in the back handing out the badges. And then he said, the second day, oh, you can come again. So the second day I was there, the doors in the front were closed. So I thought, well, might as well go to the back. And I walked in the back, and I never left anymore. And it was so funny that I had never done volunteering. So I was there the first day. Probably William did the briefing, as I think he would have done that first day. And then towards the evening, we didn't have enough volunteers. So on the first day, I was just pulling out the people from the crowds, and I'm telling them, do you want to volunteer? I'll give you a quick briefing. That's how I got into this world.
And you just were ignited by it in some way? Is it just that you had secret access through the back door to get in, or was there something more to it that drew you in?
No, it's just that I signed up for volunteering, so I was doing my part there, and um, I love this volunteering, this whole tension, um, where you're going through the room, seeing who's going to finish next, trying to not miss the tables. It's a kind of stress I really like.
I do love that both of you are on the record as having said that something the equivalent of judging is at least as fun as competing.
Without a doubt.
Definitely.
Especially when you're a very okay puzzler and you will not have that moment of glory. Being able to support someone else when they're about to have their incredible finish and be on the podium at a competition, it's something special that we get to be peripherally, is that a word, associated with in support of those top puzzlers.
Yeah, let's follow that tangent because I was going to bring this up a little bit later. One of the less well-known things about a judge, I feel like, is that judges are sort of like the finish ambassador, right? Like there is nobody else on the floor if you're doing individuals especially. You can't have other people who are not puzzlers on the floor. If you were in the top few finishers, they're probably many of your friends aren't done yet. And so the first interaction you're going to have when you're done is with a judge. And if you are doing poorly relative to how, I mean, I've talked to a lot of elite puzzlers. They have a lot of conversations going on in their head, and not all of them are the best sort of framing of things. You might have finished really well, and in which case your interaction with a judge is, supportive and exciting. You may have done much worse than you expected, even if you finished second, in which case the interactions with the judge may be more fraught. You may have been finished at the very end, in which case your interactions with the judge are very different class of things. So sort of the exit of the competition in a very real way starts with the judge. And I want to tell two quick, beautiful stories, in my opinion. First of all, I went to Worlds this last year. Me and my pairs partner, shout out to Jeff, we did okay for us, which is, we were never going to be in the top 2/3, but we did, not as well as we had expected. And Daphne came over and was like, let me help count out your pieces. And just that interaction of a friendly, like she was warm, she was supportive, she was like, let me help. Like that was a great, calm entry out of that, where it was like, I'm getting some nice help from a good person to sort of make the end of this better. And then I was doing some research for a entirely different podcast when I ran across William, you last year when Hannah Doyle finished. She finished, and you were the first person that came up to her. And the interaction, I couldn't hear the audio, but it just looked so sweet. Like she finished, I think I'm going to talk to her next week, but she finished probably ahead of where she expected. She was sort of surprised. You could see the emotion sort of overtake her. And you can see, William, you come in and sort of help land her, right? Like it was like, here's a person who I was going to come in and say some nice things. They're maybe going to be tell me where I finished because I can't necessarily know. And that moment, you gave her a high five. You gave her some nice compliments. Like these are the kinds of things I see judges do all of the time, which I feel like is really underappreciated. So I want to say, first of all, thank you both for that, because I've seen directly the work that you do. But second of all, is that the kind of thing that you put a lot of thought into? Or is this just sort of the natural expression of who you are? William, why don't you start?
Thank you for noticing all of that, Rob. That's the human connection part that is really about the community. The reality is, as a judge in any competition round, let's say for individuals, there's 200 people on the competition floor. Every single one of them is at a different place in their life. They're at a different place in their competition journey when it comes to speed puzzling. You don't know what each person, what their mindset is and what they need in that moment from a judge. You don't know if they're nervous. You don't know if they've flown halfway across the country by themselves, if there's no one there to support them. So you kind of go in thinking or seeing everyone as needing something different, but you don't know what that is. So the first thing that we tell the judges after our safety briefing is introduce yourself to every competitor that is in the row that you're going to be judging and getting times for. Build that relationship ahead of time, because you're going to get the sense of what they may individually need, especially towards the end of the competition. For Hannah, finished. She was very surprised and was like, what? Like she just didn't do anything other than like her eyes. Her eyes moved, and I think she took her headphones off. And I was that first point of contact. I was able to be out of the frame for her finish because this is about the finishing of the puzzle. So I got her time, but then was able to go right on over. And that's when you have to read them. You're doing this kind of cold reading of what do you need in this moment? Is this a high five? Is this a well done? Is this a stay back because they need to soak in the moment emotionally? Like, what is that? If you go back and watch the 2024 individuals final with Alice Rowe, you'll see I'm still that first point of contact. I just happened to be, but she needed something a little bit different. There was bewilderment. I think Faith came in, gave her a big old high five, and then she was still just sitting there. And I went back to her and I said, "Are your parents here?" And she went, "Uh-huh." And I said, "Great. Go back and say hi to your parents." And she, okay. So she got up and like sprinted to the back because I remember I think her parents were in the back watching. So it's again reading the situation and knowing every single person is different. And Rob, it's even different from individuals to teams. I'm really quick to like want to go in and congratulate the team. That's not appropriate. And I really learned that for 2025, where the team of 4 want to celebrate their accomplishment, especially those top finishers, on their own. It's about them. It's about the team. So that team finish is a way different experience for a judge and our level of involvement compared to an individual where we truly are the only first connection.
What about you, Daphne? Do you think about this terribly much, or is this an outgrowth of just who you are? What's your feelings on this?
Well, I was trained by the best. I was trained by William. It took me a while. Worlds, the first Worlds, I was more still focused on being a judge, doing my job. Where's going to be the next finish? And I think once you've done it once or twice, you can relax a little bit, and then you can see as well what the competitor needs. And that's I'm trying to do that as well now with the volunteers we have in the Netherlands, especially during this individual. If you have time, if you need to go to another table to write down the time there, then you don't have time. You do your thing. But if you have time, give them this first moment, ask them how they're doing, say something positive. If they finished first, well, it's going to be positive anyway. But if they finished in the middle, just a quick talk, how was the puzzle or something, so they can unwind a little bit. I think that's a part of being a judge as well now. And I really enjoy that part.
Does it make you emotionally drained at the end of a competition? I can imagine that if you're emotionally engaged with a lot of different people from a lot of different perspectives, that could take a toll.
Yeah, I think as well that it's more about the connection to the people. You get to know so many people, and they're in a moment where they are usually still stressed, and you get a different connection to them.
And Rob, I was shaking my head because it's the exact opposite. The emotional connection is the part that continues to feed me throughout the day and keep me going, as compared to the physical aspect of volunteering, where we're, especially if you're a lead judge or lead volunteer judge, we're on the floor walking the aisles. I probably have done at least a 10K every single day on the competition floor for 2025 and 2024, where we are resetting tables, we are cleaning tables, we are setting out the bags, we are straightening the chairs, putting out the name cards, the scorecards. That physical part is the much bigger consideration than the emotional side. The emotional connection is really the strongest and most enjoyable part of the entire weekend. That's really what that competition is about.
You alluded to, or actually identified some things that you're doing sort of as the competition gets up and running. So clearing the tables, cleaning the tables, putting things where they belong. Walk us through a little bit for those who aren't really aware. What is a judge doing once the competition is fully going? Like once the timer starts through when the timer ends, what is actually happening that a judge is doing? Obviously they're taking times, but there's more to it than that, I imagine.
Well, you have your setup of the room. If that's done, if the people are there, if they're starting. For the competitions where I've been in charge, I want the aisles to be clear again. So once you've started with your puzzle, I'll make sure that the bag is under your table, or sometimes even the bottom of the puzzle box. People will throw it in the aisle so that everything is clear again. And then it's usually time for a break, because that's the one time that it's slow. You need a few people to maybe walk around if there's something going on. But that's where you usually have like at least 20 minutes, depending on the competition, of slow time. And then you start looking where your first finishers are going to be. Usually it's going from the front of the room to the back, but you might still have a surprise. And then after your first finishers, you'll have the middle pack, which is usually all the one next to the other that is going to finish. And then towards the end, it's going to be slow again. And then towards the end, you're already thinking about setting up the room again. So the front tables, if they're free again, you might do a quick clean of the table, throw out anything you don't need anymore, the name tags or something, and yeah, set it up again for the next round. Because usually you'll have like 30 minutes in between.
I imagine that the start has got to be potentially fraught because there are a number of things that can go wrong right at the very beginning. William, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the start of your question was, what happens when we say 3, 2, 1, go? Like, what is the judge's responsibility? And so diving a little bit deeper, it starts with that countdown. We start seeing a lot of movement on the competition floor, people starting to stand up or stretch or like start hunching over their table. The first thing we're doing is watching to make sure we don't have any false starts of people opening their bag too early. Now, we really haven't seen that in competition. Maybe it might be like a half second earlier of opening the drawstring bag than something else, but we're looking for the egregious issues, nothing too minor. And then from that moment, we are as heightened as we need to be at the beginning as we are at the end, as you alluded to, where in competition, we have seen the wrong puzzle been bagged before. Sometimes we've seen manufacturer errors where the wrong puzzle is in the correct box. But how do you start discerning that until you're several minutes into the competition? What happens when the stickers on a puzzle box aren't cut all the way through? Now, I will say that 2025 USA Jigsaw Nationals had a 100% success rate for the entire weekend. We were so proud of that, but that's due in part to due exclusively to all the prep work that the USA JPA, in coordination with the Ravensburger team, alongside volunteers, me, Daphne, and Charlotte, I think that's Faith's daughter, all did
No, my
in
sister,
the days leading
actually.
up to Nationals. Oh, yes, and Karin was there too, yes? So Karin and Daphne both volunteered at 2025 USA Jigsaw Nationals. And so we had an assembly line going in a back secret conference room for every single competition puzzle that weekend, where they unboxed the large cardboard boxes. We had safety versions of box cutters that we sliced 1, 2, 3, 4 stickers, slid it down the table. The next person, my job was to lift the box top completely off the box bottom, ensure that it is completely unstickered, awesome, as it were, and then put it back on to slide it down the table for it to get bagged, drawstring closed, and then a identification colorful sticker so we knew which round it was in. That methodical approach led to a 100% success rate. And that's the sort of thing that we, as going off to the side, as Ice Pack, really want to instill in competition organizers of remove as many barriers as possible for these puzzlers and ensure complete fairness by just taking the extra time to really set up a competition the best way you can.
Now, Worlds went an entirely different way with respect to stickers, which you could say they had a 100% success rate as well. All of the stickers that they had were on. What about that was less optimal?
First of all, it was not known beforehand. You can't spring it onto the people. They're nervous anyway. And I think it has nothing to do with puzzling, how good you are at cutting your stickers. Because if you can do it fairly quickly, you have more time to look at the puzzle, and you're at an advantage. We had people who had problems where I actually did it for them because they had really problems cutting the stickers with a great black little thingy. And then they're getting stressed. You don't want that. It should be a fun competition, and it should be about who can put the puzzle together as quickest one. And
just to fill in some things there, when you say that if you can do it quickly, you have more time, it's because there was time set aside, and that's a whole story in and of itself, for taking the stickers off at Worlds. Everybody had a certain amount of time to do that. So if you got the stickers off quickly, then you could be using that time to look at the box. Is that what you were referring to?
yes, it was, yeah. And I don't really like that aspect of it. But of course, we come from the first Worlds competitions. You still had the cellophane, or what do you call it, around the puzzle
Yeah, the
box.
plastic wrap around the box. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was different. That was easier to get off. Everybody had like the same problem. I don't think it was like a big thing to do that. And then Ravensburger came with these great stickers. And that's kind of created the problem, I think, for the puzzling community. I think it was great that they were cut, and I'm hoping that it will be like that for the near future.
That's the next perfect, another example of that square I was talking about, of what decisions are favoring what. So this is a perfect example of Ravensburger. It this is, again, it's not a rule, but it's a construct of, hey, they decided that they want to reduce their plastic waste, which most of us would agree is a great thing. So you've solved for one issue, but now you've identified or you've created a new one, but it's not insurmountable. That's when you, as the competition organizer, need to take it upon yourself to slice through that. Because to Daphne's point, this is not a competition about who can get through the box first. Remove those barriers for the puzzlers. So that's adaptation that we need to continue to be flexible with in the puzzling world. When a manufacturer changes the design of something, let's roll with those punches. Let's figure out the best way forward in order to best support the puzzlers, because they're the frontline users, right?
So my understanding is that the scale, at least this is the story that was told to me, the scale of doing that at Worlds was different than the scale of doing it at like US Nationals in terms of removing the plastic tabs, cutting through them. My understanding is that was part of what drove the decision to have the competitors themselves do it, is because of the sheer amount of time it would have taken to do that. Do you guys have perspectives? Like, how long did it take William for the US to do their? There are fewer people at the US competition. There are fewer boxes to cut because at the same time last year Worlds introduced the 2 boxes or 2 puzzles per individual and pairs round. So do you have a sense that level of scale of cutting the boxes at Worlds would have been substantially more onerous?
Of course, like if you scale anything like that, the math is going to math. So I know for us, I think we did it over 2-day periods where we did like 2 to 3 hour blocks where there were 10 of us in a room and we were just enjoying each other's company and getting the work done. So yeah, you talk about scalability, but also from the planning perspective, look, if something is important enough, you're going to do it on behalf of the puzzlers. So I think that's just a difference in philosophy. My personal philosophy is remove those barriers. And then there's also a world in which you are trying, like in their defense, you are trying to keep the puzzle images as private as possible. But once you get those puzzles, like you as the event organizers, if there's a small committee, like I would, and not speaking to Worlds, just to any competition organizer, take the time. It really shows care in your competition, especially when people have traveled and they've paid good money for a good event experience. I mean, that's the difference. And when you have people walking away from a competition saying, we kind of deserved better. And that's the philosophy that you hear. It's like, ouch. Okay, so how do I interpret that and see what has happened at other competitions? And how do I just bring the absolute best competition to life? Rob, I have a personal philosophy or like personal goal of, I like creating communal moments of happiness. Like when you talk about, like, if someone was to say, like, in a therapy session, what is it that you enjoy doing? For me, it's I enjoy creating communal moments of happiness. And that's the perfect example of remove that barrier, because you want us to be as happy as possible. Like, you look around the room at nationals and you're like, you just see so much joy. That's what it's about. And how do you replicate that feeling at every puzzle competition across the world?
Let's scooch back to 2024 Worlds. It sounds like, Daphne, you were there, you volunteered, you got roped in, you were attracted to the general concept of volunteering and judging. William, it sounds like you were there in an official capacity as well.
I was not.
Okay, tell me that story.
As it turns out, I was there to be a participant, and I was so excited to be on vacation, on holiday, and in a new country. And I was actually told ahead of time when signups were released on that Google form that Daphne talked about. I was encouraged by the USA JPA board to not click that link and just go and enjoy, because I had done a lot of work for the USA Jigsaw Nationals earlier that year. And they said, William, go and enjoy, experience the competition, so that makes you an even stronger judge and volunteer, so you can really just enjoy that competitor perspective.
Yeah.
So that was my intention. And I was in whatever my first round wasn't until like later that first day. So I get to the dome for the first heat, and it's about 15 minutes before the first competition. And I don't recall if things weren't set out yet or not, but whatever it was, I remember two of the board members coming up to me and saying, William, you're needed. And I said, oh, but I didn't sign up. And they said, we know. Are you competing this first round? You're not competing this first round, William. You're needed. And it was kind of coded and kind of with the eyes. And so I said, oh, okay. So I went and found someone, and they said, oh yeah, just go ahead and put on that vest in the back. And then here's a pen, just get the times. Well, Rob, it's a good thing I kind of knew how to judge and kind of organize competitions, even though this is not my competition. I'm a guest in a new country that I had not yet been to, with Espanol being the primary language amongst the most of the volunteers from the Spanish organization, which was great. And then that's when Christina, our good friend from Australia who knows Espanol, did an amazing job of bridging that gap, and Charlie as well, of just kind of rallying people the best they could. But there was no instruction given, as I recall. So at a certain point, people were standing around looking for a briefing. So that's when I just did what I do, because there was no one else available at the time. And I just kind of gave an overview of what we would have done at USA Jigsaw Nationals, yet at the same time using the world's rules as a lens to make sure I was not misquoting anything. And that's kind of the adaptability that I kind of have as one of my, I can be adaptable, but also try not to speak out of turn, because this is not my competition. I'm kind of thrown into this, but also people were looking for some sort of support or guidance. And when there wasn't any being given, I was happy to jump in, but it was a really delicate balance. So then that's what Daphne is referring to, of like the next day having a briefing, because still there was no other briefing. So I just kind of did it. And we kind of got in the groove of it. But that's when I met Daphne for the first time, met Jason, met Christina, and realized, wow, there are like-minded individuals, and we're kind of going at this all together, just trying to make it work.
Yeah, and sometimes those can be fun experiences where, like, out of chaos comes not just order, but some kind of transcendence. But I have heard that a lot of people went to that competition with the expectation of kicking back and having a good time, and a lot of people left that competition exhausted by the amount of work they had to put into it.
Agreed.
So out of this competition, it seems like the seeds of Ice Pack were sown. Is that a fair characterizing of that? And sort of draw for me the arc here, if you wouldn't mind.
William contacted me about it, and I did not have any experience except Worlds in this whole judging area. So I didn't.
But William was already spotted you as a compatriot.
Oh yeah, he had some people he thought would fit nicely in Ice Pack.
there were that year for 2024, there were several standout individuals who, amongst the incredible volunteer judge pool, who they just kind of materialized when everyone saw there was a need for it. There were a lot of people who were very comfortable speaking, giving guidance, not direction, but like guidance to others who were seeking it from a judging perspective, especially folks who had never done it before. And those people were Daphne, who, when I was competing, would jump in and give a small unofficial briefing, Christina, and Jason. Like those were the four people that really stood out of, wow, I could look around as another volunteer and say, these are like-minded people who are experiencing the same things and feel kind of the same way of how this is going. Let's just get through this competition. But like you said, Rob, that's where the seeds were kind of planted. And we then kind of unofficially met over Zoom to get to know each other, to see, look, there's definitely a call for some sort of governing body, which we do not want to be. Like, from a judging and rules perspective. So how do we do this as like-minded individuals, yet we don't want to be in a truly official capacity? We don't have to worry about nonprofit status. We don't have to worry about meeting minutes in an incredibly detailed way, even though we do have meeting minutes from an organizational perspective. But that's when we also look around and say, okay, well, what are we missing between the four of us? Daphne herself is not necessarily a speed puzzler, but understands judging philosophy like anyone else does, and so well so. From a competition organizer perspective and a philosophy, Jason is great at the technology. Christina is a go-getter who just knows how to rally people and give direction when it's needed. What are we missing? And it was at that moment we all understood, or someone brought up Rika, who does all the statistics, even though Rika does not consider herself a statistician.
She's not afraid to get into a spreadsheet, though.
Right? So like that's the sort of kind of well-rounded abilities that we were looking for when we were sort of founding. So again, Robert, really stems from like-minded individuals all wanting to elevate the world of speed puzzling from a avenue of philosophies and consideration writing.
And this was primarily due to a lack of something at Worlds, or were there specific issues at Worlds that you guys felt needed to be dealt with? Was this a long history? Like, it's a single event seems like it wouldn't necessarily be the catalyzing moment of this other organization. So I'm just struggling a little bit to understand, like, what was it that you came away from this experience, or maybe a collection of experiences, going, you know what, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, or this is like what happened here specifically needed to be addressed? What was the thinking? What was the thing that propelled you forward into this?
I think we saw some stuff going on that for a competition of this magnitude maybe should not have happened. Like, one of the things is the cutting of the stickers, which is great that they did it that year. But a lot of it happened in the back. So if you had round A, for round B, the cutting would be going on in the back. But you had people walking in the famous back door, who might compete in round number B, who would then discreetly look away because they didn't want to spoil it for themselves either. Some things like that. And then for me, it's also this whole motivation of, it is a more worldly sport at the moment. All the organizations at the moment are popping up. They are relatively new. They're all looking where to go, which rules to get. Especially in Europe, you might do several competitions, and the rules are all slightly different. Wouldn't it be great to have one set of rules? Like the same for a lot of other sports, where you have your general rules that everybody applies. Or you can say, well, we have those rules, but in addition, we have those 2 or 3 rules. Then as a competitor, only those are different from what you're used to. So I think there is almost a need for something like this. It's just a matter of how we can apply it to the whole world.
For me, at that same competition, what Daphne was saying about like people seeing the puzzles ahead of time, Rob, I saw every round before I did it, and it was unavoidable as a judge from one round to another, despite doing my best to not see it. Just the space the lack of space in the back. It happened that way, and it was a bummer because like I really wanted to go in fair competition every single time. Not that it mattered. Again a very okay puzzler, but still I wanted that surprise like everyone else, and that wasn't something that was afforded to me as a volunteer. That was also the same year, famously, that we had a competitor that had a puzzle mid competition thrown at their face when it was the wrong puzzle that they first were given. And so I'm happy to take you on the journey and everyone on the journey of how that even happened, because I was there and saw. It wasn't until I saw it happen that moment that I was able to backtrack in my mind like a movie of how did we get here. So the round before that happened, to where a puzzle was thrown at someone, towards someone, I'll be a little bit more fair, a little bit more kind, thrown towards someone. The round before, there were 3 no-shows from that previous round. So as the floor judges, we would go around and take those bags and we put them in the back on a very specific table for it to disappear from the event organizers. They would take it, whatever they did with it.
Right.
Then concurrently, we were also prepping the next round's puzzles. As the next round's puzzles for that particular heat were being bagged, somehow one of the event organizers took the 3 puzzles off that table thinking, oh, well, this is a bagged Ravensburger puzzle. I don't know why they ended up over here. Let's put them in the box with everyone else, with all the other puzzles to be put on the floor. So that round, it wasn't just one person who had the wrong puzzle. It was 3. And when it was 3, 2, 1, go, I was in the back of the room and helped the other 2 people. I had no clue there was a third in the front, happened to be someone I knew. And so it wasn't until after that competition was done, they showed me the competition footage of them having a puzzle tossed at them. I'm getting lighter and lighter each time. That I realized, hold on, that is a safety situation. Like, it does not matter if someone had the wrong puzzle. Like, there's a way to do this to give them an adjusted start time, but to have something tossed in the air like that at someone like that, there's just a difference in ethics or philosophy. I'm not sure what it's called, but it just didn't feel right. And that's what, like, when people say like we deserve better, like that's the exact moment where it's like all those dominoes just leading to that one moment. It was a bit of a bummer to see. So that was the catalyst, Rob.
How does IcePack go about thinking about the components that it makes decisions on, and then having other folks adopt them?
Yeah, that's a perfect question. So the first time we met, we came up with philosophies and focuses that we wanted to tackle based on what we had experienced as a group. And in order of importance, kind of, we came up with safety, courtesy, accuracy, efficiency, equality, with a side category of equity. It's a little bit different. So equality and equity, and then inclusion. So Rob, our first step was just to determine what needed the most attention in our community. And then we had hours and hours over different sessions of philosophical debates amongst ourselves of why certain things were important or to be considered at all. And then we considered those differing viewpoints and counter arguments of each other, and breaking it. Okay, how could people criticize or find fault in something, and how do we fix that? And then we wrote considerations around those topics in hopes that it would help guide event organizers when writing their own event rules, or help influence rule changes in pre-established competitions.
I love the thoughtfulness of this, and I love that the thoughtfulness goes from first principles. Like, what are the things we actually care about? Once you've decided that something is something that organizers should care about, how do you convince them to care? Because you're sort of using soft power, I think, to influence here, and I would love to hear how that works and how that's going.
Yeah, I think each of us have a different sort of place in the worldwide puzzling community. Some of us are event organizers ourselves locally. Some of us have the tiny bit of influence, but I mean like suggestion ability for national organizations. Some of us are on national boards and have direct ability to write or influence rules at that level. So it's just kind of our local ability to be able to have that influence or suggestion. But then we just do it primarily through Instagram and our website. So we publish things for people to see and for organizers to consider. But then there's certain things that people have reached out to us. Hey, we really are frustrated with the age rule or the age restriction for our national organization. Can IcePack tackle that topic and try to come up with a philosophy or consideration around that? And so that was one of the tougher ones that we had to do. And it became immediately apparent that we couldn't lock ourselves into an age because there's so many specific factors for individual kids and their parents, and then regionality or cultural differences across the world. And then at the same time, like Daphne did a ton of research from childhood psychology and sports, and there was a lot of thoughtful research that was done. So in a philosophy like that or consideration, we had to publish something that was vague, that didn't really give a specific year or age, but instead really talked about the regionality and the different cultural considerations as the backdrop for that decision for those different competitions. A good example of that is, although USAJPA has an age requirement of 16 years or older for individual competitions, I don't think that's the case for Winter Carnival, right? And that's been pre-established. So even within the same country, we understand there's regionality or past precedents. Now, that doesn't mean anything other than, hey, if you do have a minor competing or someone who's like younger than 16 or whatever, hey, make sure to have their parent or legal guardian in the room within eyesight. So at any time, if there is a need for a parent or legal guardian to be involved for anything, please make sure that they're in the room and readily available. I think a great example of that is Connor was asked to be on the live stream. So I was able to quickly go over to Connor's mom and confirm. And I said, yeah, come on over. And I'll walk you over to the interview place so you can be right off camera for anything. So it's really more about comfortability and safety of that competitor.
And is the idea that IcePack will provide general approaches that are meant to help guide individual expressions of a rule?
Yes, we don't want it to be so cookie cutter that someone just doesn't want, or a group or individual doesn't want to fully adopt it, and instead it be a little bit more malleable to a regional consideration or a national consideration. Or cultural consideration, as it were. So a lot of these are sweeping philosophies around like inclusion, about like what does table size or I'm sorry, some things are more specific, like table size, of like, hey, you got to have the same exact table size for every single competitor. A good example of that, Rob, is, 1 year or for nationals, like the top competitors in the heat, like the top 10 puzzlers get the full table, whereas everyone else gets half a table. Like, that's not equitable. I understand it's more exciting and it's interesting or it's helpful to give the top puzzlers like that extra boost, but that's just not equitable in a competition. Let's call it what it is. So those are the kind of things that are much more specific, whereas the philosophies are things like, hey, look at your lighting conditions in the room. Make sure that your temperature is at an appropriate setting. Make sure that there's good space between the aisles for people, and make sure like spectators aren't leaning up against a barricade right next to a puzzler because the people in the center don't have that same puzzling experience.
Now, the World Series, I think, has officially said that they were going to adhere to or conform to or be guided by IcePack recommendations. Are you finding that other competitions are also picking up IcePack explicitly?
They have not shared with us in an official capacity, but just we get a lot of individual thanks and admiration for the work that we're doing, because it is help guiding people. We haven't gotten, again, huge outpourings of expression of that, but that's not what we're looking for. We are looking just to see in the written rules, hey, are we seeing some of our philosophies, whether they're copied word for word or the spirit of it is nicely represented. So that's kind of what we're looking for. And that's our hope. And this is kind of the slow burn, Rob. Like we're just past our 1 year mark of when we've started publishing our first considerations, and it's going really well. And we still get an occasional, maybe once a month request. And, hey, can you look at this rule and maybe see if there's something you can write around it, because you don't have something for this considered yet we're seeing this at our national organization, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if that's if it's perfectly written the way we have it. So can you take a look at that? So the fact that the World Series is kind of looking at adopting that or using us as a back I don't know, like a starting place is very kind, and that's exactly the type of buy-in we hope to continue seeing more of in the future.
One last thing I want to touch on before we leave IcePack is that there are a couple of what y'all have identified as trickier topics that are sort of up for conversation. One that I don't fully understand, I would love a little bit of color on, is you had something about sorting trays as an area, but then I'd like to follow that with, like, if people want to get involved in that conversation, how do they do that?
Well, I'll answer the easier question first, which is if you want to get involved in that conversation, is have your opinion expressed, go to the IcePack website. That's icepackpuzzle.org, ispacpuzzle.org, and have just send us a message. We would love to hear from more folks about different things that can really be considered from a true publication, or if you just want our opinion on something, we'll be happy to give it. We'll give you 5 opinions, one from each of us, which we always kind of find a way to wordsmith a consideration that properly represents us all. But Rob, going back to the first part of like sorting trays, yeah, the philosophy there is, how do you give a tool that's a trickier subject? How do you have an appropriate amount of tools or sorting trays in a competition that isn't overwhelming for a puzzler, that takes up too much space, but does what it's intended to do, but not in a way that's now going to be an advantage or disadvantage for everyone? So like the sizing requirements are really like the focus of this. The color, the texture, none of that matters. It's just, hey, watch where you put it. Less is sometimes more. I love Andrea Pang and her comfort tray, right? You've talked about that a lot on the podcast, because it's fun and it's real. But then that kind of also factors into, hey, let's not have a 1,000 piece puzzle for a pairs competition, because that's going to be difficult for puzzlers, because now they're going to put those trays under the table in order to maximize their space. So Rob, yeah, that's a trickier one. There's things like more time of day considerations for some folks, days of the week. Some folks honor different holidays on a Saturday. Some folks honor different holidays or like family focuses on a Sunday. How do you weigh all of that? And there's no easy answer, but one of the things that you can do from an inclusion perspective is be flexible as an event organizer for where you slot someone in a competition if they have a specific consideration that they like.
William, it sounds like you have a perspective about jigsaw puzzling being in the Olympics, which a lot of people have perspectives on that may be unusual. Tell me a little bit about that.
So the backstory, Rob, is that I listen to every episode of Peace Talks. I'm a big fan, and I really enjoy all the conversation, the insight from people I know close at home and everyone around the world. So it's just a real gift that you've given me when I'm doing my running training. I do a lot of running. So Rob, you're on those runs with me, whether you want it or not. And one of the questions that I always love hearing perspective on is, well, is puzzling a real sport, or is it going to be in the Olympics? And
yes,
while I do believe it's a real sport, I do have a hot take on why it's never going to be in the Olympics. And it's actually quite simple.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone has brought it up from this perspective before. And it really comes down to the manufacturing. When you compare, let's say, a track and field event, you have the athlete, you have the Olympian. They have everything they need to perform that sport that they bring with them on their person, which is their person. They might have some running gear, their shoes, their specific sportswear. But then they get there and they're just running. The foot brackets at the beginning of the race are provided. It's a tool. We have our own tools in speed puzzling between sorting trays and box top holders. But compared to any other sport, there's this other factor, which is the puzzle. And there's no truly fair way to prevent any sort of link or previous knowledge from a puzzle being released, even if it's from a certain manufacturer and everything is as locked down as possible. There's no truly fair way for manufacturing to take place, even though we try our darndest. And that's a factor that no other Olympic sport has to contend with is the locking down of knowledge. The only thing that like could leak is like a certain person's program, like on ice skating or something. Or like what routine they're going to do on the floor from gymnastics. But that's all on the person. There's not this outside entity, the puzzle manufacturer, that's required. And so for that reason, I don't see a true ability to be an Olympic sport, which is fine. We're doing just fine on our own through a communal experience around the world, doing it ourselves without needing it to be through the Olympic organization.
Do you think that the fact that something is going to leak is primarily an issue? You said it's not possible to not have that information get out. Is that because specific countries will be manufacturing that, or just because it has to be touched by so many people along the way? Like, what is it about? Like, you sort of had me sold at it has a manufacturing component flat out, right? Like, there's that part just to begin with, but you sort of accentuated that by talking about the secrecy involved and how challenging that is. Can you give me another couple sentences around why that is so challenging in your perspective?
Yeah, the amount of people, like you said, that are involved in the process from start to finish. Literally, a manufacturer reaching out to an artist. So that's manufacturer, that's artist. Then that's wherever the production is, and then there's the distribution of it along the way. So at least 4 entities that have all now touched that. And then what happens when you bring it to the Olympic Village or wherever the competition is, and then you have to have people unboxing it, prepping it, bagging it, even if that's all within the manufacturer of themselves. If they say, hey, we will start to finish to do this entire process, you still have an artist who's in there. If you scale that back and say, hey, we have in-house artists, great. How do you still keep that completely under wraps, even with NDAs for everyone in your organization, especially with just, again, the sheer number of people? It's tough. And I might have not articulated that perfectly, but I think it at least gives the sense of, there's a lot of points of failure that this could happen. Whereas another sport is just plug and play. You go, you show up, you do your thing with your past, the abilities you've trained for. This is a completely different or additional consideration.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense to me. I would be interested if anybody has any examples of what they think might be another competition at the Olympics where the information that comes in is sort of a central part of the competition. I can't think of one, but people are far more thoughtful than I am about this, so I'd love to hear that. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Prove me wrong in the best way possible, because it would be a great case study, right?
Yeah. Daphne, who's Judy?
Judy is my little owlie. At 25 US nationals, Ravensburger is you purchased for, I think, like $30 or $40. You would get a coin, and in the basement, you could put your coin in one of those grabbing machines.
Yeah, claw
and
machine.
You would get one of 3 little Ravensburger mascots. And I got Judy. And I saw somewhere that Disney has those animals you can put on your shoulder with a magnet in there. Well, and I saw that and I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. So I put a little magnet in her butt, and now she can sit on my shoulder. I took her with me to the Dutch National because I thought it would be fun. And for the Dutch National, she did not have a name yet. And we were driving back, an 8-hour drive, so we had enough time. And we were thinking, well, she needs a name and her own Instagram account. And now she has her own Instagram account, which is all done by my daughter.
What's her Instagram?
Judy Judging Owl.
So for the Americans, Judy.the.judging.owl on Instagram. Now, what I like about this is that you took a prize from a Ravensburger thing and turned it into an icon. You elevated Judy beyond just something that one could get as using a token as a keepsake and made her something that is well known. I love that she sits on your shoulder. That was one of the first things I saw when you came over and counted us out at the Worlds this year. But her Instagram also provides additional value. The first time I ran into Judy was when people were passing around how to open a box at Worlds using the new decal cutting tool. What made you decide to turn Judy from this keepsake into something more substantial?
Well, she had she had a platform that was, I wouldn't say neutral, but we thought it would be like funny if she told people how we could do stuff. Like she started actually already before Worlds because the rule change with the missing piece went from 10 seconds to 5 seconds. And I did a little bit of research on that. And actually, it's like 90% of the time, it's quicker if you just call time on that one and take your 5 seconds.
Judy's got a perspective. Like Judy doesn't pull punches. She's not just about telling you how to open something, but Judy will tell you that it is better to not look for your pieces under the world's rules. And Judy had a perspective about stacking puzzles in the teams competition as well.
Yeah, she had inside knowledge. That was a conversation we had the night before the team event. That actually this year it was not in the rules, not clearly in the rule, what you could and could not do. And I always like everybody to have the same knowledge. And that was one of the things that we asked around what was allowed. And they said, well, it's not in the rules that you need to put the puzzle back into the box. Like a lot of the countries will have a specific rule about that. It was not in the rules, so actually you could just throw it off the table and it would be okay.
This is in the teams competition specifically or in general?
It was, only in the teams competitions you have 2 puzzles back to back. And usually you will fold your puzzle and put it back in the box. And usually the rules will have a mention towards this, that it needs to be in the box before you can start a second puzzle or anything like that. And this year for Worlds, it was definitely not in there. And I think the year before, it was specifically in there that you could not put it under the white sheet, the plastic sheet.
That they put on the tables, yeah.
Yeah. 2 years ago, there was actually a Dutch team that did that. They would just slide it off the white sheet, put it like on the table, and then put the white sheet on top of it again, which I think is brilliant. Then in 24, they had it in the rules that it was not allowed, and in 25, somehow that rule disappeared. Don't know why. But then somebody complained in 25 that it is in the rules that you're not allowed to have a template of the puzzle. And if it is under the white sheet, you still have the template, which I personally think is a little bit far-fetched, but I don't make the rules for this competition.
I was going to say, you literally in some cases do make the rules, but not this one.
No, not this one. If it's my rules, there'll be specific things will be in there because I've seen it at other competitions, and I want to have specific things done or not done. That is as well where iSpec comes in and will give you things to think about. Where especially if you're starting competition, you will not think about everything, which is normal. And one of the things I really like about the iSpec recommendations is a visual countdown, which makes it easier for some people to see when the competition starts. And it's not only for the hard of hearing or deaf community, but also other people who might be nervous. It might be helpful to have the clock counting down. And it's a little thing to do as an organizer.
I do enjoy that the U.S. Nationals rules for 2025 seem to be very explicit about what has to happen with a puzzle in a team's multi-puzzle competition. So it seems like there's no ambiguity as to whether or not you have to put the puzzle away in the box before you move on to the next one. I can't tell if that was lessons learned or that was just well articulated previously. But I also like to think that when it comes to rules and laws, often they exist for some story, right? Some story, somebody did a thing that caused somebody to have to think about a thing, and therefore a rule exists. And that would play 100% into what you were saying, Daphne, about the fact that as a new person starting a new competition, you can't know all the things because you haven't experienced all the weird ways that something goes wrong. And I think maybe William, you had said earlier that, or perhaps it was Daphne, that the probably there are going to be more rules over time. And that's because we keep running into weird situations, right? That somebody's like, okay, well, what do we do when water drips out of the sky onto a puzzle? Like, what's the rule there? What do we do when any number of other weird things happen? So I love that IcePack is providing that sort of backstop and guidance. And I really love that it's the philosophical guidance. Like, here's what we are thinking is important. Here's the general direction. Like, I love that you seem to start from the broad and then go to the narrow. Like, here's what we conceptually, philosophically think is important. Let's see how we actually can derive something from that. Because if your rule ends up not making sense, the specific rule, you always can fall back on the what were we trying to do with this in the first place? Or if somebody isn't trying to interpret your rules, they can always move to the higher level and say, what was the goal of this? Do we have that same problem in mind?
I think there's always that joke of, oh, well, something was designed by committee, right? Like, oh, yeah, this is the exact opposite of what we're going for. We want philosophies and considerations to be done by committee, because if 5 of us from around the world can agree on the nomenclature or the wording on something specific, chances are that others are going to have similar feelings or at least mindsets on something. So if it starts with us and we're able to successfully publish something, hopefully other people would agree or can agree with what our philosophy was around a certain topic, or if not, use it as a starting place to develop their own.
With respect to the upcoming U.S. Nationals, there have been some rule changes, most of them pretty minor, but one of them I am curious when it comes to the story behind it, as we were talking about just a second ago, is the yellow card system. More words are dedicated to that than any other rule change, it seems. So I'm curious a little bit about what compels U.S. Nationals to have the yellow card system. So maybe, William, would you mind telling us a little bit about what that is and then help us understand what that's all about?
So I will do my best, but it will be important very much to note here that I am not speaking on behalf of the USAJPA board. That is the board and their rules.
Okay.
So I will do my absolute best, but this is me as William, the puzzlier volunteer dude, and not as a USAJPA board member who wrote that. My understanding is that at 2025 USA Jigsaw Nationals, as great as everything was, there are some times where we are asking, as a judge, we are giving a small correction or like a behavioral correction or space correction, whatever it is, to a competitor or a pair or a team to be back in alignment with what our interpretation of the rules are. And sometimes there's hesitancy or confusion about whether or not what someone is doing in that moment is correct. And so there might be a touch of pushback of, well, someone else is doing X, why can't I? And so it's in that moment trying to balance us getting the behavior corrected, yet at the same time understanding that's taking away precious seconds from a person. So my understanding is the yellow card system is a visual representation of like, hey, you're not doing something right. Please get back in alignment the best you can. And if you need more information, we can have the verbal conversation with you right here. But with like we're not sure yet. Like I'm talking to talk with Heather Mueller about this. Like, are we going to write a one word like your side of the table or music too loud? Like, do we just write that on the card so they understand what it is? And it's like hey, pay attention. Please make this correction so you can go forward. As far as the penalties, that's when I think that's more preemptive, just as a like, hey, if we do get pushback and this is not great in the spirit of what this competition is, this is a formalized process like you'd see in another sport of, hey, you've been given a warning. If this continues or there's another behavior, you will get a red card and you'll be disqualified. So I think that part is a little bit more preemptive than anything else. But the yellow card is more just like a warning of like, hey, please get back in alignment. I believe I represented that correctly.
I mean, it was definitely, it helped me better understand it. I am curious, as my reading of the rules seems to indicate that a lot of the responsibility for inquiry and follow-up fall to the head judge, which, William, I assume is going to be you in this case. No.
It's actually not. So if I can
Tell me
expand a little
more.
bit,
Please.
there's going to be a little bit of a rewording in the rules where there's going to be three classifications. One is volunteer judge. So we're not going to have the room monitor anymore. That was a little bit too vague. And again, when we say volunteer judge, we really mean volunteer timekeeper, but they are doing more than just timekeeping. They are looking for those minor rule bends or people not in complete alignment. So they are empowered as a volunteer judge to make that first contact with a puzzler. If they need to make a slight correction, they're empowered to do that. But if there's any pushback or there's something that's a little bit more major, or a little bit that needs to be elevated, they can go to me, the lead volunteer judge. So that's a new title.
Okay.
And I report directly to the head judge, USAJPA board member, Heather Mueller. So that will be the reporting structure. Again, we have volunteer judge, head volunteer judge, which is me, and then head judge, which is Heather Mueller, for all official rulings in all matters that happen, and to actually give out any yellow or red cards. That will all come from the head judge, Heather.
Got it. That's very informative. Thank you, William. Mm-hmm. Do you have a sense, and I know that I'm now asking you to represent for something that you didn't have a ton of involvement in. It seems challenging to get a yellow card. That doesn't seem challenging. That seems like pretty easy. I could probably imagine how I could get one. And maybe I should just get one for the sake of having a token from the event.
Oh, you don't get to keep that. Sorry, Rob. It's a,
dang it.
Flash and a goodbye.
I was just gonna start singing, and I assumed that would give me a card, but
you might get one of these Shandling shims as a souvenir.
I 100% will get a Shandling shim because I cannot help myself but drop things on the floor.
I'll sign your copy. How about that?
That'd be amazing. But so there's an appeals process. The appeals need to be filed. It sounds like immediately. To your point, the goal of this is to try and reduce the amount of potential time you're taking away from a competitor while also dealing with what I imagine is mostly going to be infringing behaviors on other competitors, right? Do you have a sense of how the appeal process is going to work in real time? Because I think that, like, if you give me a yellow card, the first thing I'm going to be doing is like, oh God, I've got a yellow card now. I'm panicked, but also I got to figure out what to do about that. I've potentially got to file an appeal right now. It's potentially fairly intrusive. And again, understanding that the behavior you're trying to correct is also intrusive behavior. I'm just kind of curious as to how you're thinking about that process and how it unfolds.
So that's where I would be in pure speculation. So I will have to talk about that with Heather and the board to understand, is that an immediate in the moment, or can this be done at the end of a round? The only place that would be kind of a gray area is if you get a red card in the middle of the competition, are you stopping puzzling or not? So I will, just like you, find out at the competition or as we get closer, a little bit more information so we can properly execute that as needed. But again, this is going to be such a fringe case. I can't even imagine, like, even with our experiences at 2025, nothing got to that level. This is just now, like, it seems in place just in case. But I'm happy to learn and see what the board has in mind around that.
Okay, and I don't mean to put you on the spot for something that you don't have any perspective on, but I thought as potentially a judge for whom this will become some responsibility of yours, at least intermediately, maybe you'd already had those kinds of conversations. And just as a FYI, it is the word appeals must be made immediately is the thing that sort of got me wondering. Like, if appeals can be made after the fact, maybe that's a different story, but depending on what the definition of immediately is in this sense.
Because at a certain point, if someone was disqualified mid-round, now the concern from an event organizer perspective is there going to be emotions associated with that? Is it going to be distracting to other competitors? So I think there's going to be a lot of balance in there for whatever the situation is. And luckily that gets elevated to Heather and other board members in that moment when we get to that level.
At this year's U.S. Nationals, my understanding, William, is that you are the lead volunteer judge for the competition, the main competition area. But also, Daphne, if I am not incorrect, you are the lead volunteer something for the convention area. Is that true?
for the Cobble Hill side of the competition, the more fun competitions.
So you're coming all the way across the Atlantic to come and participate in some judging on the Cobble Hill side. How did you get roped into that? And tell me what you know about what's going to go on there and what you're going to be doing. What can you share?
Well, not too much. How I got roped in there, I don't know. I had a contact to fate. I love going to U.S. Nationals because it's a time to meet the American puzzlers that I like and love. Since they're not coming to World, I need to go to the U.S. So I asked if I could help again, and somehow she got this Cobble Hill site for me, which I really like. So now I bought some Cobble Hill puzzles to see what they're about, and I love them. I really like the random cut at the moment. So yeah, looking forward to
Random Cut's making a comeback, yeah.
Rob, if I may interrupt and just dote on Daphne for a minute, it needs to be said that she is incredibly gracious with her time and sharing her talent as a judge. She has come to the U.S. Jigsaw Nationals in 2025. She's coming again in 2026. She even volunteered at the Orange County Speed Puzzlers 24-hour puzzle marathon earlier in 2025. So like officially it was an international competition in quotes because she came to help judge. Like that is incredibly generous, even for like well, I don't know if that was a small event. It was pretty big, but like to have Daphne there and her expertise and her wisdom, it's just, there's something to be said about that sense of community in the same way that, Rob, so many people say like, yeah, where would you want to go if money was no object? Yeah, I want to go to Australia. Yeah. Hey, Australians, I'm coming in 2027 or 28, and I want to volunteer for them. So in the same sort of way, like I want to point out Daphne's graciousness in going around the world essentially to help with judging. It's not even competing on her own time. It's an incredible thing that she does, and we are so lucky to have her.
Agreed.
And it's so much fun.
Daphne, you and I've had a couple of conversations, which I've enjoyed because you were there at U.S. Nationals. I have heard rumors, but I'm not plugged into this community, that there are a number of folks who travel primarily for judging, not competing. Is that true?
I think Jason goes around as an event organizer as well. Oh, you know, we do have Trish and Sue. They're specific to the USA Jigsaw Nationals where they are non-puzzlers, but they love our community so much that they volunteer and they have signed up for every single volunteer slot on the board as volunteer judges as well. So if they're listening to this, like we are so lucky to have them too. I know there's a mother and daughter duo who always volunteer, but Rob, I'm not sure to your point if there's others who truly travel, except Trish and Sue always attach it to a longer vacation. Oh, you're going to Atlanta? Great. We'll volunteer for the week and then we'll extend afterwards and we'll visit Atlanta and all of Georgia. Like we're so lucky to have that. But I'm not sure about anyone else outside of Daphne and maybe Jason.
One of the conversations I enjoyed, Daphne, that you and I had last year was on the current state of technology when it comes to competitions. And I'm wondering if you could maybe give us an update or some perspectives on where technology is. And I would love to hear sort of how it intersects with the idea of judging and fairness as well.
Well, in the Dutch Association, we're lucky to have our IT guys, Patrick, who taught us all that, there needs to be a change here. We can't do that with paper and pen and writing down the times, and it's going to be not as accurate. Actually, I watched last year's Worlds as well on the live stream and then with the result sheet. And if you look then exactly what the result is, and you look what the time they have on the computer screen, there's always going to be a little bit of a difference because every judge still does it a little bit different. And he thought the same, and he is IT is his world, his love. He thought it would be easier to do it with an app. So he created for us last year for the first Dutch Nationals an app for the judges And he expanded it for this year for an app for all the participants as well, where you can have your results and everything. You can register already in our app, or you can pay in there as well. And for the judges, it's amazing that every table where you have your name, we have a little QR code, which is connected to the table. So table number 1 has its own QR code. And as a judge, I can just scan it and I'll know who's sitting there. And if they're about to finish, I can stop the time in the app. So I just look at my participant. I don't have to look at the time because the time does not really interest me anymore. I can just focus on when the last piece goes in there. I can stop the time. I can still adjust the time slightly if I think, well, I stopped that a little bit too early or too late. And I put in the missing pieces in there. So that automatically puts in the penalty for the missing pieces, 5 or 10 seconds or whatever you want. And then the time is in the system, or I send it off and the time is in the system, which comes automatically on the big screen. Or I can even look in the app and I can tell you that probably you're finished number 16. There's always a little bit of, because somebody else might have stopped another contestant's time and still put in like an adjustment of that time. But I can tell you it's about number 16 or whatever. And you can, this year, you can also look in your own app and see, well, you finished number 16, which I think is amazing. And I think we're slowly going towards something like this because it's going to be more competitive, and especially in the middle area. There are so many contestants that are just seconds apart, where it really matters how you as a judge write down the time. If you have an ideal point of view where you can see the clock and the last piece going in, even how you're doing is if you're looking for the last piece going in and then looking up, that will take like half a second. So you might write down, instead of 15, you might write down 16 seconds. Or I usually try to count in my head. I will look up on time every once in a while, and I'll keep on counting. And then I know that you put it in at 15 seconds. But everybody has a slightly different system there. And since we're talking about seconds, it matters what you're doing. And I think with this new system, it's getting more accurate.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. We've seen ties, like 0-second difference ties. So you're right in that having something more accurate would be great for figuring that out and making sure that people are represented for the times that they actually got. Do you see this kind of technology? Is that available to folks outside of the Dutch competitions? Like, is that something that other competitions are able to pick up?
Well, we're trying to get it out into the world. He's still, I loved his system from last year. Well, he said the back end was not neat and stuff like that, which I totally don't understand. And he threw it in the bin and he started over this year. So that's why he's not totally finished yet. But we had some countries, also the States, who are interested in this system. Because you can do so much more with it. You can have your results from all the contestants in there. So you have your all your results. It doesn't matter if it's worlds or US nationals or anything else. You could have all the results in there for easy access. If I look now on my phone, I have an app for everything. Why not have an app for puzzling?
100% agree. And as a self-professed data nerd, I would be extremely excited for everything to be in one place.
And you can do so much more with the whole statistics because you can see who had a penalty for missing pieces, how many pieces were missing. You can do so much more. It's fun.
As a person who has done some of the writing down of times, like there's a fair amount of pressure on getting that right because you want to represent the person's actual time. You want to make sure that you're giving them the credit that they're due. And you have a lot of other sporting events where that's automated in some way. It would be great to bring that level of precision into the competitive puzzling world. Let's go to the speed round. The speed round is where I will ask you a question where I'm looking for a pretty quick answer. Since you guys are somewhat different than the usual jigsaw puzzling competitors, I will ask a lot of the same questions because you guys are still puzzlers and I would love to hear the answers, but I've recontextualized one of them for this. So we will go William and then Daphne each time, just go back and forth. Everybody ready?
Ready.
Yep.
Gradient, patterns, or fur?
Gradient.
Gradient here as well.
Well, all right. Consensus. Illustration or photo?
Illustration.
Yep, have to agree. Illustration.
Busy or landscape?
Busy.
No, definitely a landscape.
Round or rectangular?
Rectangular.
Yeah, easier. It's rectangular.
Wood or cardboard?
Cardboard.
I've come into the pleasure of wood puzzles. I love them.
Ribbon cut or random cut?
Ribbon cut.
Well, I've already told you, I've tried some cobble hill puzzles. At the moment, random cut.
When you're judging, do you prefer individuals, pairs, or teams?
Oh, Rob, I wasn't prepared for that one.
I know. I
Oh
just
my
totally
gosh.
tripped you up by slightly rewording a question.
Oh, gosh. Don't make me choose. Now I know how other people feel when they've gone through the speed round. I don't want to choose. I don't want to choose. There's something so great about each one, Rob. I'm sorry. I'm going to not pick because they are all so good. Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Now I have to answer it, right? To our conversation earlier, I think that individuals might be my favorite because of our conversation around the immediacy of needing to be there for the competitor, but we don't know what that is in that moment, whereas teams have themselves. And now that we've reframed that and we understand to let the teams have their moment, let the pairs have their moment, I think we add the most value in an individual. So I'll have to say individuals. Thank you for letting me show my work.
Daphne?
Yeah, exactly the same. In individuals, you have more of a connection to the competitors. In the other rounds, they have a connection with each other. Yep.
Do you have a current favorite brand?
My friends would call me a Ravens maven, so I'm a Ravensburger person through and through. Now, not like Liza Fireman, like not that level. Like she's an amazing collector, but like the knowledge and the passion for Ravensburger, it's Ravensburger.
Okay, Daphne, I sort of suspect I know where this is going, but do you have a favorite brand?
Oh, that's a really difficult one. I have loads of Ravensburger puzzles, but actually my favorite puzzle of all times is a Liberty one.
Oh. And to that end, do you have a favorite puzzle?
The answer is yes. It's Gloomy Carnival by Ravensburger from the Abandoned series. I am such an Abandoned series person. Of course, I'm the just like everyone else, I'm always looking for the Lost Empire that no longer published one from the Abandoned series. So if anyone has one, ... Yeah, Gloomy Carnival, because my love of theme parks and then like abandoned. I don't know if I have a love of abandoned places, but just that and the gloominess. And Ravensburger, it's my puzzle.
Daphne?
No, I like different puzzles. Not one that I would take with me everywhere. No.
No favorite. All right. Controversial stance. Where can people find more of you?
For me on Instagram personally, it's at _puzzleer, THE_PUZZLEAR. And of course, we'd love you to, love folks to join us for our upcoming half marathon for Orange County Speed Puzzlers, also on Instagram.
Daphne?
Daphne Puzzle on Instagram. And Judy, of course, with Judy the Judging Owl.
Daphne and William, thank you so much for joining me. This has been great. This has been as nerdy as I had hoped it would be in this topic.
Very glad to talk with you about something we're so passionate about.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.